The other question I'd ask is about the survey that you conducted. When was that survey conducted?
It was conducted late last year, early this year.
Okay, so there was a 2015...
This is the client stakeholder survey. Yep.
So the 2015 survey that was conducted, was it the same? Did you approach the same people as you approached in 2015?
Senator, it's an anonymous survey, but...
well, anonymous means the person responding doesn't have to give a name, but in terms of the people who were approached, did you approach the AOPA? Did you approach Sports Aircraft Association of Australia? Did you approach the Gliding Federation of Australia? Those organisations that were here, were they included in the survey?
So, Senator Patrick, we went out to 11,000 respondents. We got just under 1,200 responses.
How did you choose those respondents?
What, the 1,200? We didn't choose them, that was individuals chose to respond.
The 11,000.
Look, this is clear. The Senators asked you what methodology you put in place to do the survey. Did you select this organisation, this organisation, this organisation and send a survey form to 100% of their membership? So how did you find the 11,000 cohort in the first instance? That's the burden of his question. I mean, it gets me cranky when it's plain English questions and we get these long drawn-out answers that are almost non-responsive to the intent of the Senator's question. So, Chair, would you please revisit the question again and answer it in the spirit of its intent?
Chair, if I may, Mr Walker was responsible for the management of the survey.
Right, well, he should have been whistled up 5 minutes ago. Mr Walker.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Rob Walker. I'm the Executive Manager for Stakeholder Engagement for Civil Aviation Safety Authority. And yes, I had oversight of the conduct of the survey.
Yes.
I wasn't with the organisation for the 2015 survey, but was for the 2018 survey, yes, which we conducted during April and June of this year. The cohort that was chosen was randomly selected from the CASA database. It was done by a company called Colmar Brunton, who are independent and external research company that are obviously well respected. They were selected through a competitive tender process and were obviously the successful tenderer. We provided them a database for them to select randomly across 11,000 of our stakeholders. The only requirement we had was that we tried to get a truly representative example similar to the one that we had in 2015 across all sectors. So in other words, we had a mix of pilots, licensed aircraft maintenance engineers.
So you did give them certain specs. It wasn't a random selection. It was to be selected randomly, but having regard to these
from
specs.
Sectors, yes.
And so you didn't, sorry, Mr Crawford's evidence was you surveyed 11,000 people.
No.
Your evidence is you provided 11,000 on a database for them to randomly select, right?
Certainly, if I could just give you a little bit more detail, Chair.
Yeah.
So we had a cohort of 11,000 that we approached. That approach was done via Colmar Brunton, and it was an opt-in or an opt-out type survey. So we couldn't make it compulsory for people to complete the survey. We asked them to participate if they wanted to. We had 1,168 responses from 11,000.
But hold on, how many of the 11,000 did you approach and say, here's a survey of which you can voluntarily participate in?
So there's two components to the survey. One is quantitative, which is the hard online question
Mr
answer.
Walker, one more time. How many of the 11... Listen, I'll tell you what, we got the people from the transport industry. I'm happy to sit them here till midnight.
Certainly.
We won't leave, so we can go the long path or the short path. How many of the 11,000 were selected and received some sort of indication that they could voluntarily participate in a survey?
11,000, Senator.
11,000 of them, right? So,
11,000.
So, just, Mr Walker, let me just show you why I'm laughing at the moment. You got 11,000 on a database.
Yes.
You then indicate to us that you asked the proponent who won the job, that won the tender, that you'd select cohorts to make sure they're all covered, and now your evidence is that all of them got a survey application.
I'm sorry if I've confused you, Senators. My point is that 11,000 were chosen.
Yes.
The only requirement was that we hoped to have a cohort that represented all sectors of the industry.
Yeah, but Mr Walker, 11,000 were chosen from 11,000 possibilities. Is that correct?
No, 11,000 were chosen out of a database of 50,000.
Ah, there we go now.
So
there we go.
Now that was done because
No, I'm not interested, but okay. I want the accurate evidence before the committee in the first instance, right?
I'm trying to be accurate.
You should have spat that out about 20 minutes ago. Senator.
Thank you. So there are 11,000 of the 50,000 were randomly selected. Is that how I understand your evidence?
That's correct.
Okay. So who selected the 11,000? That was the independent company?
That's correct.
Okay. And there was some criteria around how to make that selection?
The only request that we had was that we got a representative sample across all sectors.
Okay, so would you be confident in saying that, for example, AOPA there were OAPA members included in the sample,
Yes, I would.
and the Gliding Federation of Australia,
Yes, I would.
and the Sports Aircraft Association of Australia?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so is there any way of working out the distribution of
Yes, that's specified in the report.
So, for example, if one organisation made up 10% of the 50,000 in your database, were your instructions or guidelines to the successful tenderer that 10% of the 11,000 will also come out of that cohort of that association? Was it like that?
That was the plan, Senator, yes.
Okay, so have you got documentation around this? You called for a tender,
Yes.
you laid it all out, they responded. Can you take on notice to provide us? Now listen,
Certainly.
I again spend 20 minutes, or we can do the A to Z thing, right? Which is
No, I'm trying to be very
everything.
specific for you, Senator.
Everything about that tender process
Yes.
comes to this committee.
Certainly, more than happy to
And
provide that.
the date for that, can I have colleagues concur, be the 3rd of December? So concurred, the 3rd of December.
3rd of December, thank you.
and the rationale for the selection? I presume that was in the report.
Sorry, Senator, I missed that.
And the rationale for the selection of the 11,000, was that in the tender or was that in the report?
That's specified in the report. There's obviously some information there that shows exactly where
And
that comes from.
did the survey garner the membership of these various organisations for the participants? I know they're anonymous.
No, it did not.
So how can you be sure that there would be members from those organisations I mentioned?
So of the 1,168 respondents that did actually respond, those are broken down into sectors, and there's over 200 of those that were classified themselves as private pilots. There's also some lesser cohorts that identified themselves as self-administering organisations, and a couple of others that have identified themselves as recreational flyers.
So, Senator, we don't know who they were, but we asked them to categorise themselves in the response.
Okay, thank you.